Hello. So now we're going to jump into chapter 4 of Brihat Parasara Hora Sastra as translated and commented on by Girish Chand Sharmaji. And we're starting on chapter 4, which is on the Rasis, translated in this edition as Zodiacal Signs described. And I can't read the Sanskrit, so I'm not sure if Parashara called them signs or Rashis, or that's just a translation to English circa 1996 that this translator settled on. Nowadays, I think any translation would probably use Rashi if that's the Sanskrit word, because that's pretty commonly known amongst Vedic astrologers now, or Jyotishis. All right, so here we go. Jumping into Shloka 1 through 2, importance of Hora. The dropping of the first and the last syllable of the word, well, I can't read the Sanskrit, unfortunately, leaves behind it the word Hora. Okay, now I'm curious, what word leaves behind Hora? Or Hora, okay, here it says, or Hora is derived from the word Abhoratra, and Hora, the 12 signs, remains in between Abhoratra, i.e. day and night. Okay, so Abhoratra is the name for a day of day and night, I believe? Or is that the name for day and night respectively, or just half of a day? I can't remember from the last chapter. But, okay, so this is the initial shloka? Okay, let me read this again. This is surprising. So this is what Parashara wrote. The importance of Hora. The dropping of the first and the last syllable of the word Abhoratra leaves behind it the word Hora. Okay. The good and the bad effects of the native are to be spoken only after knowing Hora. O Brahmin, know that the zodiacal signs beginning from Aries are the limbs of the indescribable Vishnu, the time personified, Janardana. Okay? Let me just think about that for a second. The good and the bad effects are spoken only after knowing Hora. No, after knowing the time of birth, the hour of birth. This is going to change the ascendant. And although I don't think this chapter is going to get into bhavas necessarily, but yeah, we start off by needing to know the correct ascendant, or lagna, to know the correct Rashi, or sign for the lagna. Makes sense. And then he explicitly says here in this first sentence, this thing that I've often heard described, that this idea of the Rashis being the limbs of the indescribable Vishnu. I've also heard them described as unconscious, that are given consciousness by the grahas that are in them, which have consciousness. So, yeah, let me read that last sentence one more time, and then I'll continue. O Brahmin, know that the zodiacal signs beginning from Aries are the limbs of the indescribable Vishnu, the time personified, Janardana. 3. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces are the 12 signs of the zodiac in order. 4. Oh, wait, what does this say? 4-4.5? What's with the half? Huh. Okay. The 12, maybe there's something I'm missing here. It says 4 through 4.5. Okay, is the next shloka starting at 5 in it? Okay, I'll just keep reading. So it seems a little odd. Okay, so shloka 4 through 4.5. The 12 signs beginning from Aries are respectively the head, face, arms. Maybe Gemini would be, so I'll put in here Aries head, Taurus face, Gemini arms, Cancer heart, Leo stomach, Virgo hip, Libra space below navel, Scorpio the private parts, Sagittarius thighs, Capricorn knees, Aquarius ankles, and Pisces feet. Of the Kala Purusha. Note, the zodiac represents the body of the Kala Purusha, the time eternal. Kala Purusha is the Sanskrit word used by the ancient Hindu astrologers for eternal time. The ancient Sanskrit texts contain a number of learned and philosophical dissertations on time. the eternal time, which has no beginning or end, and thus endless is identified with God, i.e., time is God, the Almighty, the Lord of the universe. The hour's hand, the minute hand, and the second hand of a watch are tokens or indicators of the divisions of time in it. In the same way, Earth's movement on the ecliptic is regarded as the hand of the watch of the time eternal. In the Hindu mythology, this ecliptic is referred to as Sudarshana Chakra, the splendid wheel in the hand of Vishnu, the weapon of Janardana. And I believe Sudarshana Chakra elsewhere is this, what would it be? I believe it's three circular zodiacs on top of each other, with one with the ascendant in place, and the other two with the moon and the Lagna, or Chandra and Surya charts of the Rashi chart, of the birth chart. And you see all three of them together, and there's certain techniques I've heard that you could apply to that. It's a chakra that's included in both Jagannath Hora and Kala software, probably Parashara's Light too. Since it's mentioned here, well, no, but this is mentioned by the commentary of, Mr. Sharma. All right. The conception of zodiac as representing the body of the eternal time, or Kala Purusha, is of great importance in the practice of astrology. The Sanskrit text, Swalpajataka, refers to its importance in the following way. And here's the Sanskrit. It's not clear if he translates the Sanskrit verbatim, though, but I'll just read where he writes below the Sanskrit. That is, the consideration should be as to which sign has the yoga of benefic planets and which has that of malefic ones. The signs that have the presence of benefic planet in it or is aspected by a benefic planet will strengthen that limb of the native in which it is situated in the body of the Kala Purusha. And the sign which has the presence or aspect of a malefic in it will weaken or give disease to the limb of the native, which is related to that sign in the body of the Kala Purusha. Thus, Aries represents head. Therefore, if Saturn is situated in Aries and he doesn't have the aspect of any benefic planet, nor has he the combination of any benefic planet, then the native will be subject to headaches and injuries in the head. If Aries has the effect of other malefic planets besides that of Saturn, it will cause more and serious problems in the cavity of the head, such as giddiness, paralysis. I think by giddiness, does he mean like mania? I don't know. Or some kind of mental health thing. Giddiness, paralysis, wounds, derangement, brain fever, monomania, etc. So things that are neurological and psychological, perhaps, as well as possible head trauma. Therefore, the underlying idea is that if sign number 1, Aries, is afflicted by a malefic planet, then the first part of the body, i.e. the head, will be diseased or injured. Similarly, if the sign Taurus is under malefic influences, then the face may get injury or disease. In the like manner, the affliction by the influence of malefic planets of any sign or a sign will bring injury, disease, want of growth, or deformity to the correspondent part of the body. And if any sign is occupied by auspicious planets or aspected by them, the corresponding parts of the body will be healthy, strong, and beautiful. So he's extrapolating a very literal interpretation of that. It's sort of a fundamental of a medical astrology, perhaps. So let's continue. So shloka 5 through 5.5. So another half shloka. Interesting. Or unless I'm reading this incorrectly, I don't think I am. Beginning from Aries, the 12 signs are of movable, fixed, and dual nature, malefic and benefic, male and female, and of bilious, windy, tridhatu, and phlegmatic disposition. Okay? I'm curious about that last trinity of descriptions, the windy, tridhatu, and phlegmatic disposition. And let's continue, and I'm sure the author will talk about that. I think that's referring to the 3 doshas of Ayurveda. So notes, Saj Parashara has classified the nature of the 12 signs from different angles. Thus, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn are movable signs. Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius are fixed ones, and Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces are of dual nature. Again, Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, Aquarius are cruel and male signs, while Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces are Saumya, beneficial, and female signs. And Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are of bilious nature. Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn are of windy nature. Gemini, Libra, okay, these are the 4 elements. Gemini, Libra, Aquarius of Tridhatu nature, meaning air. Wait, this is confusing. Wait, hold on. So he's saying Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are of bilious nature. Let me look up. Okay, so I looked it up, and yeah, this is a little perplexing, so hopefully he'll expand on it. Or maybe, yeah, I don't know. So let's just look at it again. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, obviously the fire signs, but he says they are of bilious nature. Bilious refers to bile and nausea, so some kind of like disgust kind of feeling in the body. Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, the earth signs of windy nature. That's surprising that it would be windy when these are traditionally thought of as earth signs. Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius of Tridhatu nature. When I Googled it, what came up was this idea of the 3 elements not including fire, so out of 4. So earth, air, and water. So the combination of earth, air, and water is referred to as Tridhatu, and Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are, of course, the air signs. So it's a little, I don't know, a little perplexing. Earth and air and water together being related to Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. So maybe that'll be expanded upon. Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces of phlegmatic nature. So this refers to the water signs, of course, but phlegmatic means unemotional and of a calm kind of stolid nature was the definition, which means just unaffected, unemotional, sort of stoic. So Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, I don't often think of as stoic signs, actually. Gemini and Libra, Gemini I could see as this Tridhatu, because you're trading back and forth ideas, but that's also from the movable or from the dual air aspect of it. Equating earth with air or earth with windy nature reminds me of this way that Saturn is the ruler of an air and an earth sign, and Saturn is ruled by the air element, Vayu, but looked at through the, how do you put this? The life-generating cycle of the 5 elements. Secondarily, Saturn is looked at as ruling an earth aspect that I won't get into how that's derived, but that's part of Ernst Wilhelm's 5-element course, and it has to do with the cycle of creation and the way that sort of begins in the luminaries, sun and moon signs, and then of Cancer and Leo, and then it ripples out towards the other end where you have the earth element represented in in Capricorn and Aquarius, which are of course ruled by Saturn. So there is something about Saturn that is both earth and air. So to say Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn are of windy nature makes a little sense. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are of bilious nature. So bile and nausea could be produced by fire, I suppose. I don't know. That's kind of a new way of looking at it to me. Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius having this Tridhatu nature is a little perplexing. Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces being unemotional. I often think of Scorpio and Cancer as the most emotional, and Pisces even in some cases. So, yeah, I don't know. So maybe this will be expanded upon as we continue, and maybe this is referring more to the doshas of Vita, Kapha, and forgetting the other one of Ayurveda. So we'll see as we continue. All the signs of cruel nature are male signs, and those of beneficial nature are female ones. The nature of the signs has great significance in a horoscope. If the sign of an ascendant is of cruel nature and is a male one, the native will have more of the manly qualities. On the contrary, the occupation of the ascendant by Saumya, or beneficial signs, and the influence of the female planets will give the native womanly qualities like delicacy, gracefulness, humility, and sensing of yielding. It will be seen in all fields of life. The usefulness of movable, fixed, and dual nature is also manifold. These may be used in Prajna, Jyotisha, and Hora. So used for, a Prajna reading or a horoscope birth reading. It has been said in ancient books on astrology that if the ascendant is occupied by a movable sign and the lord of the ascendant is also in a movable sign, the native concerned earns his living from some foreign land. The meaning is that the place of earning his livelihood will not be one and a fixed place. He will be fond of wandering and moving. If there are more planets in a movable sign, then he will be more active and practical and less reflective and thoughtful. On more active and practical, just keep it moving as opposed to being fixed and being reflective and thoughtful as you're fixed. On the other hand, if there are more planets in a fixed sign, he is more reflective and thoughtful and less practical and active. If of movable nature, he will be more prone to wrath, ready to take offense, which, however, is of short duration. If of fixed nature, he is slow to take offense, but anger may remain for longer duration. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then dual would be sometimes either, I suppose. I don't know if he gets into dual here, describing that. So now he moves on to the theory of Dhatu, which includes Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, is the foundation of Ayurvedic science. Its embryological, anatomical, physiological, pathological, and therapeutical conceptions rest upon this foundation. It has been the product of the genius of this country and has not been borrowed from outside. There are references, specially of Tridhatu, in Vedic literature also. Okay, so this Tridhatu, so the air sign would be the one that would have a mixed nature of the three doshas, is what he's saying here. That's what he's saying clearly. So let's continue. The three, which makes a lot more sense. So it actually does include the air element, but fundamentally the air signs include air, maybe air, fire, and water. I'm not sure if it's the same Tridhatu that Google came up with, which didn't include fire. It started at water and then went to air and earth. So we'll see if he says this explicitly or not. All right, so the three dhatus. There are references, specially of Tridhatu, in Vedic literature also. Okay, so this is going back into more ancient texts in the Vedas. The three dhatus, known as Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, are the three elementary and fundamental units or principles on which the building and sustenance of the body depends. Hence, it is that they are called dhatus, which literally means supporters. When they are in normal equilibrium, it is health, and ill health when they are not. Okay, so you're healthy when they're in equilibrium, and you have bad health when they're not in equilibrium. In which case, these dhatus are technically known as doshas, literally meaning faults. Right, so they're often referred to as doshas because most people are out of balance, and if you're pursuing Ayurveda, then you're looking for the imbalances. Whereas the fundamental principles of these three as supporters of health are known as dhatus, which means supporter. Makes sense. Vata, Pitta, and Shleshma, or Kapha, come from the Sanskrit root va, tapa, and shlish, and indicate their action in the body. By some, Vata is translated as wind, Pitta as bile, and Shleshma as phlegm, or fotid sputum, which is like spit? I'm not sure. Fotid. F-O-E-T-I-D. Sputum. Which is evidently misleading. The meaning of the root va is gati, motion or movement, and gandhana, initiation and enthusiasm, I believe. He says enthusiasm, but I think he means enthusiasm. So let me say that again. The meaning of the root va is gati, which means movement or motion, and gandhana, initiation and enthusiasm. This means that the natural attributes of vatas or vayu are motion, sensation, and power of imparting that motion and sensation to other bodies, along with initiation and enthusiasm. Similarly, so let me try to make sure I get that. So the natural attributes of the vatas or vayu, which are wind, okay, wait, by some vata is, right, okay, okay, yeah, well, vayu means the air element, and vata, he just said, is wind, but he says vatas here, so I think he's still just referring to the first element of vata. So he's saying the natural attributes of vatas or vayu are motion, sensation, and the power of imparting that motion and sensation to other bodies, along with initiation and enthusiasm. Similarly, the meaning of tapa is santap, which means heat, and that of shlish is alingana, which means to embrace. This means that the natural attributes of pitta are to produce heat and biochemical attributes in the body. Right, so that so that'd be the fire element, which makes sense now because we're talking about the fire signs are of bilious nature, and the earth signs are of windy nature, which is still a little surprising, slightly. The air signs are of the nature of all three, a mixture, and then the water signs are of phlegmatic or kapha nature, or shleshma as it's also called. So yeah, this is all coming into focus now. All right, so similarly, the meaning of tapa is santap, heat, and that of shlish is alingana, to embrace. This means that the natural attributes of pitta are to produce heat and biochemical attributes in the body. Similarly, the attributes of shleshma is cohesion, union, and integration, which is related to the water element. According to Charaka, Sutrasthan chapter 18, Pitta, Kapha, and Vata are respectively responsible for the following: vision, as opposed to perception, which is due to Vayu. Right, okay, vision. Wait, so are we focused on one? Pitta, Kapha, and Vata are respectively responsible for the following. So we're starting with Pitta, which is ruled by fire, Kapha, water, and then Vata, wind or air. Okay, so vision. This is a great introduction to Ayurveda doshas. So yeah, I'm glad this is in here. Okay, so vision as opposed to perception, which is due to Vayu, the air element. Digestion leads to production of hunger, thirst, softness, and suppleness of the body. Luster, cheerfulness, and intelligence are due to Pitta in its normal state. Snehanam, smooth working of joints, general stability of the body, general build, potency, strength, forbearance, courage, and greedlessness are due to Kapha in its normal state. Oh, okay. So the smooth working of the joints, stability of the body, build, potency, strength, because yeah, as soon as I said potency, it made me think of Venus, which is about vitality and related to semen. So that idea makes a lot of sense. Courage and greedlessness are related to the water element, because Venus is ruled by the water element. So that's really interesting. Courage and greedlessness, as opposed to the Pitta dosha or Vata, which is related to digestion, hunger, thirst, softness, suppleness, cheerfulness, intelligence. So not courage. Courage is included in the Kapha element, which is water. So that's a little surprising and a little confusing for me in the moment. I'm not super familiar with, I can't speculate in why the water-ruled Vata or dosha would be related to courage, whereas in usual 4 or 5 element theory, fire element ruled Mars is going to be related to courage, but, that's what it says here. The Kapha is related to courage and greedlessness, and that's going to be the phlegmatic and water rashi related dosha or Vata. enthusiasm, inspiration, and expiration. Voluntary actions like talking and walking. The due circulation throughout the body of its supporting elements like chyle, I'm not sure what that, or like chelation, like keel, I'm not sure what that is. It means exactly. Blood, etc. Okay, supportive, circulating elements of the body. So perhaps the lymphatic system as well. Perhaps the nervous system, not sure, because that's circulating in a way, and neurons perhaps. Neural network system. Ayurveda speaks of the circulation not only of the blood, as in modern Western medicure, but also of other dhatus used as the 7 dhatus, and the due discharge from the body of its excretory products are due to vata in its normal state. So vata, ruled by the wind of windy nature, circulates things in all the ways that they're circulated, whereas what we've learned is that the kapha has to do with strength, potency, courage, greedlessness, and pitta has this intelligence and cheerfulness, as well as hunger, thirst, softness, and suppleness are related to the fire element, related, and vision as well. That's all related to pitta. Okay, so the classification of dhatus in the signs or rashis is of great importance. The equilibrium of the dhatu in the body, which is related to the sign of Rashi present in the 6th house, depends upon as to what kinds of planets are situated in this house, the 6th house, or have their aspect on it. So 6th house is related to health. So yeah, and this is all from the commentary of Sri Girish Chand Sharma, just to be clear. This is not Parashara. He's just extrapolating on a lot of the basics of Ayurvedic theory and the 3 dashas or vatas. So the translator and commentator is. If on the 6th house there is an aspect of malefic planets and there is no influence of benefic planets, the body will have diseases related to that dhatu. In the reverse case, the dhatu will remain in equilibrium or balance and diseases related to it will not occur. The inauspicious influences falling on the sign in the ascendant have evil effect on the constitution of the body. This influence is based on the sign present in the ascendant. And the same influence on the 4th house will have its relation with the psychological plane of the native, because the 4th is the internal world, and it relates to happiness and, mental disposition, emotional disposition. All right, so now we're at shlokas 6 through 7, Aries described. And this is back to Parashara. The sign Aries has blood red complexion, huge bulky body, is a quadruped sign, and is strong during night. It resides in the east. Excuse me. It resides in the east, is of royal caste, and wanders in the hills. It has the predominance of Rajoguna, rises with its back, and is fiery. Its lord is Mars. I'm going to read that one more time, just because I interrupted myself with clearing my throat. The sign Aries has blood red complexion, huge bulky body, is a quadruped sign, and is strong during night. It resides in the east, which is where, Mars, first sign, related to the natural house of the 1st house. Is that... Yeah, and then the fire and the sun. In some sense, sun is related to the 1st house, but I'm just thinking of relationships of why it would be in the east with the Mars rulership. It resides in the east, is of royal caste, and wanders in the hills. It has predominance of Rajoguna, rises with its back, so it's like moving forward, and is fiery. Its lord is Mars. Certainly a fiery sign. Perhaps the most fiery. Okay, so, or definitely the most fiery. Shloka 8, Taurus described. Taurus is white in complexion and is lorded by Venus. It is long, is a quadruped sign, and is strong in the night. Okay, those are all quite similar to Aries, which is also strong during the night and also a quadruped sign. However, Aries is bulky and Taurus is long, as well as Taurus is white and Aries was blood red complexion. It resides in the south and represents villages. So the south, where would that be? That's, I mean, with Digbala, that's the 10th house related. So, yeah, interesting. The 10th house would be related to activities out in the world and, work, career. So the villages, I don't know if that's a necessary connection, but that's just trying to connect it if I can. It resides in the south and represents villages. It is a Vaishya caste, and Vaishya again was commerce, so that does make sense for the 10th house. Its element is the earth, right? It is Rajoguni, and it rises with its back. So just like Aries, also Rajoguni, also rising with its back. So with its back, it's heading forward, basically. It's not going backwards. It's not going inner. It's going outwards, just like Aries. So it makes sense to me. These two signs, they really get the zodiac started, and they're both heading forwards, rising with their back. They both have this Rajoguni energy of action and ambition and desire to do something. Makes a lot of sense so far. So Shloka 9 through 9.5, another half one. That's kind of, I'm not sure why it says that. Why it's not, yeah, it's curious. Maybe it has to do with the number of words in Sanskrit that are used. I don't know, because it doesn't look like it from what I'm seeing, but it might. It actually might. I don't know. If you know the reason why it would say not 9 to 9.5 here, and this is the first time I'm encountering this so far in the reading of this book, that we have shlokas that don't go to whole numbers, they go to half numbers. So if you have an idea of why that is in this book, let me know in the comments. So 9 to 9.5, Gemini described. The sign Gemini, right? Interesting that Gemini would be the first one to have a half, though, in describing the Rashis. The sign Gemini rises with its head. It is represented by a couple, male and female, holding a mace and a lute. It resides in the west, and its element is air. Okay, so let's look at that so far. It's in the west, which is where you'd see Saturn, you'd see Venus, related to the 7th house. But here we have Gemini, which is Mercury ruled. So it's interesting that it's related to the west. So there's some cycle being completed in the first 3 Rashis. I would put it that way. It's based on modality, because this is our first dual sign, of course, and we've got a half, and Gemini, it's almost like one soul cut in half in a way where it's dual. So there's some symbolism there, even if that's just, who knows, some kind of synchronicity. And it's represented by a couple, so you have the male and female energy balance, which is true as well for Mercury, which is a dual sign, or a neuter planet. And the element is air of Gemini, as we know. It is biped, so this is our first human base sign, because the first 2 are quadrupeds, or 4-legged animals. So this is a human sign because it has a male and a female instead of a quadruped with Aries and Taurus. Although the description here of Aries and Taurus did not say bull or ram, they just say quadruped. So it's not clear, which is interesting. So it's not clear exactly. Although you could say Aries is the bulkier quadruped, Taurus is the long quadruped. So, you could look at it that way. Bulky versus long quadrupeds. And then, what do we have next? In the same shlokas on Gemini, it is strong in the night, just like our first 2 Rashis so far. Resides in villages, just like, similar to Taurus. Taurus represents villages. Gemini resides in those villages. So it's like the Gemini, the male and female holding the mace and lute, reside in the village of Taurus, you could say. It kind of feels like. And is windy in temperament. So not only is it not only is its element air, it says its element is air, but also it is windy in temperament, which means it has a what do you call that again? A Vata Dhatu, right? So, yeah, I think I misused the word Vata earlier, but a Vata Dhafu, or rather a dosha, is represented by Gemini. Okay, and because it's windy in temperament. It has an even body, and its hue is grass green. So green is the color in the middle of the color wheel. Out of 7 colors, green is right in the center. Makes sense. There's a balance. It's a dual sign. It's Gemini. It's male-female balance. It has an even body, even side, even aspects are positive, negative polarity in that sense. Its lord is Mercury, as we know. So yeah, that was a very beautiful description of Gemini, and yeah, it was beautiful to look at. I mean, all 3 of these Rashis so far. I'm really enjoying this chapter now that we're getting into Parashara's description of these Rashis one by one. So next up we have shlokas 10 through 11, Cancer described. The sign Cancer is pale red in hue, unlike Aries that was blood red. Cancer is pale red in hue, resides in forests, Brahmin by caste. So this is our first Brahmin. Because first we had a royal caste in Aries, then we had a, for a Vaishya caste for Taurus. I'm not sure if we got a caste for Gemini listed. I don't think we did, actually. It said resides in villages. That's all it said. It didn't say what caste it would be related to. And so then Cancer is Brahmin by caste, which is interesting. Because is Moon one of the Brahmin planets? It's Sun, Moon, and Jupiter, isn't it? So yeah, so there's a connection there. Cancer being Moon ruled. In fact, if I do that same analysis of Taurus and Aries real quick, Aries, Mars is which caste is that? That would be the warrior caste, which is not related to the Aries sign of royal caste, so that does not fit. And Venus is related to the, which caste was that again? Blanking on it. Was that royal or was that commerce? I think it was commerce, a Vaishya caste, I think. Although I'm a little foggy. So, all right, I'll just continue. And so yeah, Cancer, but that's a nice synchronicity for Cancer and Moon to both be a Brahmin caste, and is strong in the night. So far, all 4 of our first 4 Rashis are strong in the night. It is many-footed and has a bulky body. So many-footed, that's like the crab, I suppose, but it's not saying crab. And is crab many-footed? I'm not sure how many feet crabs have, now that I think about it. They have the claws. Do they have 6 legs? But this also makes it sound like it could be an insect. And in a way, people think of crabs as the insect of the ocean, or one of them in a way, because it kind of looks insect-like. So, yeah, so many-footed and has a bulky body. That definitely seems like it could describe a crab, although it's more general here. It could be anything that's many-footed and has a bulky body. Many-footed seems to imply more feet than 4. Otherwise, it would say quadruped, perhaps. It is Satvika in disposition. Okay. Yeah, I'm just realizing again, we didn't get a guna disposition for Gemini. Perhaps because Gemini can go different ways. Just like Mercury, it can be a Samya be a very benefic planet if it's by itself or in conjunction with the benefic, or it can be a cruel, Krura planet. Mercury could be if it's in conjunction with a cruel, Krura planet. So yeah, and here we have Moon. Yeah, so Gemini was not described with any guna. Cancer is being described as our first Satvika guna disposition, Rashi. Its element is water. It rises with its back. Okay, so is that... trying to remember now. Did Gemini rise with its back? I don't think it did. Let me see. It rises with its head. Okay, so Gemini is rising with its head. I'm trying to picture what that means to rise with your head as opposed to back. Because I was sort of guessing it would be the front. But maybe as we go on, that'll be clear if other planets rise with the head or the front. I'm not sure if front is going to come up. I know the nakshatras rise upward, backwards, and forwards, I think. Maybe, or no, upward, downward, and they rise in at least 3 directions. I can't remember exactly. So I think this might be the same kind of system of delineation. But yeah, Gemini rises with its head, which would be perhaps going up, is what my intuition tells me. And then but we'll see if we get clarity on that. Cancer rises with its back, just like Aries and Taurus. So Cancer is moving forwards. It's rising with its back. I think that's what that means. This is the way I've interpreted it so far, but now I'm questioning that. So it says it rises with its back, and the moon has been regarded as its lord. Okay. 12, Leo described. The sign Leo is of Sattvika nature, disposition and lorded by the sun. It is 4-footed, so it doesn't say quadruped. It says it is 4-footed, and Kshatriya, which means martial by race, and resides in forests. So again, sun as one of the luminaries is not Kshatriya, I don't believe. I believe sun was Brahmin. I might be getting that wrong, because there were 2 different ways that we went over caste, and one of them was related to that last chapter. I need to go back and review that, because actually, I mean, sun might be Kshatriya. I can't remember now. Definitely need to memorize this information, so it's good to be reading it. So I'll just keep reading. The sign Leo is of Sattvika disposition and lorded by the sun. It is 4-footed and Kshatriya, martial by race, and resides in forests. Oh, okay. Who else resided in forests that we just covered? It was Cancer, wasn't it? Yeah. So Cancer and Leo both reside in forests. So it's almost like there's something royal about being in forests, in the sense that they're the luminaries. However, Cancer is Brahmin and Leo is the Kshatriya. So that's interesting. It rises with its head, although Kshatriya is royal, isn't it? And then Cancer is... I'm going to have to go back and review the caste. That's something that I'm not as familiar with, really, in general. It rises with its head, like Gemini did. Has a bulky body, like Aries, Leo does. So Aries and Leo, the first 2 fire element Rashi so far, both have a bulky body. Except Aries was described as huge bulky body and quadruped. Leo is described as just bulky body and 4-footed, which would mean quadruped, I suppose, and is pale in hue. Leo is pale in hue. It doesn't say what color, it just says pale, which is interesting because Venus is white in complexion. That's an interesting sort of, comparison. It resides in the east. Okay, so it resides in the east, just like, didn't Mars reside in the east? Yes, it did, and it makes perfect sense for Sun to rise in the east and reside in the east, right, or Leo, which is Sun ruled. And it is strong in the day. Okay, so this is our first Rashi so far that's strong in the day. Everything up until now has been strong at night, which sort of gives you this feeling like, as you may have seen and heard descriptions of the 12 zodiac signs, as if you start from the luminaries, you could go from the sun, through Virgo, Libra, and this is sort of like the sun direction of things, and then the moon direction would represent the night, where you would start from Cancer and then go to Gemini, Taurus, Aries, and this is so this is giving us this idea of strong in the day from Cancer back to Aries, and strong in the night from Cancer back to Aries. And now we have strong in the day starting from Leo. So it'll be interesting. My hypothesis is that we'll get quite a few more strong in the day now following Leo, just at least through Scorpio, if it follows the same pattern as we just experienced with the first 5 Rashis, or 4 Rashis prior to Leo. All right. Shloka 13 through 14, Virgo described. The sign Virgo has been spoken of as Parvatiya, or hill resorter, and is strong in the day. It rises with its head and has a medium-sized body. It is biped and resides in the south. It has grains and fire in its hands. It is a Vaishya Varna race and is variegated. Its element is air. It is virgin. It is tamoguni. It is of childlike nature, and its lord is Mercury. 15 through 16 and a half. Libra and Scorpio both described. The sign Libra rises with its head, is strong in day, has black complexion, is Rajoguni in nature. It resides in the west and wanders on the earth. It is violent, is of Shudra Varna race, and medium-sized body, and is biped. Its lord is Venus. The sign Scorpio has slender physique and is multi-footed, centipede. It is Brahmin by Varna race and resides in holes. Its direction is north, and it is strong in day. Its hue is reddish, brown, and it resides in both water and land. It has hairy body, very sharp forepart, very sharp sting, and its ruler or lord is Mars. So in what we're looking at right now, let's just take a moment to reflect on some of this. Let's say like the Tamoguni for Virgo. In fact, in one description, Leo through Scorpio are all Tamoguni or Tamas. However, this description in Parashara is that Leo is Sattvic and Virgo is Tamoguni. So in a sense, Leo just rules the kingdom in a very direct way, guided by the divine. The sun is there. Mercury is more back and forth. It's overthinking things. Virgo is the Mula Trikona and exaltation sign of Mercury. So here, it's very effective at solving problems. And yet, Virgo itself is Tamas. It is a virgin in Tamaguni. How could someone be a virgin and so tamasic? Because tamasic nature is often associated with corrupt sexuality or just chasing after desires. But a younger person is what it means by virgin. So it's really just somebody who hasn't figured things out yet and they want to have things. Tamas is associated with having and identifying. Traditionally, someone has to go through the paces of life, the highs and the lows, to get to the point where things become more sattvic, unless they're incarnated as someone who's already so aware and awakened from past life experience, perhaps. So this shows us that someone who is young and naive is going to be more tamasic, more deluded. And if you talk to people who are younger, as you get older, you start to realize that everyone kind of has this fixed idea they start out with about how the world works, that they may even think is very insightful and different than things that came before them. And then as time goes on, you see how everything is just so simple, that originality is impossible, and everything that appears to be original is just an extension of something. And it's an extension of desire. It's an extension of over-identifying with something. Like right now, there's a push to enhance artificial intelligence until it'll help humans become more intelligent, or it'll surpass human intelligence and become the next primary species of Earth. Many futurists speculate about this, and people have different thoughts on whether that's a good or bad thing. But regardless, the idea that there's something new that would happen from a bigger brain, from a computer that can make more and faster calculations more smoothly and correctly than the human brain is capable of, that would somehow lead to things fundamentally different, is naive and tamasic, because it's focused on this attainment of something that will always continue to be out of reach. So even an artificial intelligence, so to speak, that's a million times more intelligent than human would be, it would, how do I put this? Well, it would have the same basic problems of humans. And whether that's us in the future or some other species that we're ushering in through technology. Now, the element is air, a Virgo. That's interesting because Yeah, why would that be? I'm not sure. Because was Gemini related to air? Did it say? Let me go back a page. Gemini is windy in temperament, and the element is air. So, oh, yeah, well, Mercury. So, Mercury is ruling the earth element. In another way, it rules the ether element. So, this is giving another way to look at it, that it's also ruling the air element, because clearly Mercury's association with Virgo and Gemini regarding air makes a lot of sense. In fact, before I had these things memorized a while ago, I always thought of Mercury as more air-like because of Gemini and Virgo, and I always thought of Saturn as more Earth-like because Capricorn involves a mountain and things move slower there and it's more grounded. And in a way, Saturn is representing the Earth element because it's on the opposite side of the luminaries, and there's more to that from the five element theory. But for Mercury to represent the air element, well, it makes sense too, because you have sun and moon as fire and water, and then the next thing would be air. And then Venus would have an earth element in that sense, as it would rule the next two signs, Taurus, and which is an earth element, and Libra. And let me just double check. Did it say specifically that Taurus ruled earth? It does, yeah. So it makes sense. And Libra we're going to get to next. Or we just read Libra. Yeah, so Libra is Rajoguna. It rules the west, wanders on earth, so it is ruling the west. It's the opposite side of Aries, which is related to the first house naturally. Libra would relate to the seventh house naturally. And it says it is violent. That is kind of interesting. Why would Libra be violent? This Venusian element where there's strong differences. Of course, sixth house and eighth house relationships are more traditionally conceived of as potentially violent, involving obstacle, injury, enemies. But the seventh house is also one of the houses related to death, because it's the 12th from the 8th, which is longevity. So the 12th from the 8th would be death. So the violence of the seventh is really just in the other. It's in the idea of the other who completes you, but also in this completion, the compromise that's required for a Libra relationship, which is what Libra rules, commerce and relationship and trade, ruled by Venus, which is about relationship and love, and has a water element association. And here it says wanders on earth. Does it say an element specifically other than that? Parashara does not, apparently. It just says wanders on the earth. So whereas Taurus is more at home on the earth, you could see, and there's a village relationship with Taurus, right? It resides in the south and represents villages. Venus ruling Libra. Libra has this more wandering element where you're going to the other side. The yin is approaching the yang and vice versa. The violence of it is just the potential of when you find the other side. I mean, imagine, like a long time ago when anybody would go from one country to a whole new continent or a whole new area, the people they find might be violent towards outsiders, and they might be violent towards the natives. And this is sort of a fear-based response when you're approaching the opposite, the other, the unknown. And you even see this in any area where opinions are polarized with politics, or any ideas really, that where opinions become polarized around these one side being more yin, one side being more yang. Even like with left and right politics, I remember hearing a professor say how like the characterization of the left as having bleeding hearts has this violent imagery to it, that their heart is bleeding. They're bleeding from the inside, whereas the people on the left might criticize people on the right as being cold-hearted and cruel and prone to actual violence or allowing violence and being more, bloodthirsty for other people's blood in war, like blood from outside of their body. And then the accusation from the right to the left is that there's bleeding at the core of their body, in their heart itself, that's going to kill them, basically from the inside. It's this idea that if there's not protection at the borders of immigrants and things like this, then they are just allowing death to come through the front door, basically. Whereas the opposite side says, well, if you're putting up these boundaries, you're letting people die outside of our front door, and maybe even going out and doing acts of war to try to meddle with people in a way that's causing more destruction by trying to control everything. And so, I mean, that's kind of an extreme political lens to look at it through, or some, not very extreme, but a somewhat standard political dichotomy to look at things throughout history, not just right now. This is always the debate that's being had between yang and yin energy. The solution to this, in my view, is for more consciousness, more love, more peace, not in a oversimplistic kumbaya way, but in a deep way that involves understanding of all perspectives and then clear analysis. I mean, this goes back to that interplay of the yin and yang. So very Libra-like, all this entire discussion. And then Scorpio having the slender physique, which is interesting because Mars' other sign was very robust and had a huge bulky body and quadruped. Scorpio has a slender physique and multi-footed like a centipede. It is Brahmin, so that's very interesting. So imagine the very wise Brahmin, which is associated with Venus and Jupiter. Imagine this very, wise, religious, devout to the divine centipede that is skinny. It's a very interesting archetype. It reminds me of the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland. And, but there's a wisdom there, although that caterpillar was smoking weed, so maybe that wasn't quite the best example, but that's the only thing that comes to mind, because this is such an odd archetype in a way, or not one that I'm used to encountering. And Varna, race, I don't have the so-called races memorized, or the of this. I read Ernst Wilhelm's chapter on that in the Graha Sutras. And it resides in holes. It's strong in the day, its direction is north, its hue is reddish-brown, it resides in both water and land, so that's interesting. So Scorpio has a mix of water and earth, and yet it's ruled by Mars, which is a fire. So it has a hairy body, very sharp stinger, and it's ruled by Mars. So it has this attack that has a fire caustic nature to it, but it's coming from the water and it's going onto land. It's not seeking trouble. It's more just protecting itself. And it has, where Cancer has the kind of body that will basically protect with a shell, although if I go back and read what it said about Cancer, which was also many-footed, so the two water signs so far are the two insect-like or many-footed. Cancer was Sattvika because it was ruled by one of the luminaries, of course, the moon. It has a bulky body like Aries, so it's very protected in that sense. We don't see anything about how it attacks or protects itself other than it has a bulky body, whereas Scorpio is very slender. It doesn't need to have a bulky body. It's very light, and it can travel through water and land, through the mystical and the grounded, you could say, because water rules moksha, and earth rules artha, the practical, part of life, and really acquiring what's needed, doing what's needed in a practical kind of 10th house kind of way, as the main kendra associated with the artha. What do you call that? Trikona. So this Scorpio is very interesting in that it has three elements involved. What did the last section call that? Tri-Muhurti? Or, no, that wasn't it, but it was tri-something. It's going back to the doshas. Well, it's not so important, but the point is it's got a mixture of water, earth, and fire with the stinger and the aggressive energy of Mars, but it's more slow moving in these fixed waters. It's the fixed water sign. And the earth element is a little harder to see in Scorpio. So I think just when you mix fire and water, you get this mixture elements of air and earth. So in this way, Scorpio is just one of the most mystical signs. And air wasn't mentioned, but I would add that into it in some way or another. It's strong in the day. Its direction is north. Air is just a necessary component to connect back to the heavens, or if you combine fire and water, you'll get an air element. And there would also be an element of poison involved in the tail. I mean, although it doesn't say that here, it just says a sharp sting. But sting or it says a sharp forepart. So, yeah, but we do know that insects that have sharp foreparts often have poison involved. So this is like a kind of fiery water. Or this is even a kind of, you could say, primitive form of an idea of war, an idea of combine the fire into the water. That's what a poison is. And ideas are ruled by the air element. And so, and then the fire, well, what else do we have here? We have the earth. It's very grounded. Scorpio's not the most grounded, but it actually, it's grounding mystical ideas. It's just that they're never fully in the water or fully on earth. And so there's this mixture of things. And so that's quite a bit of time on Scorpio, but it's very interesting to feel into these Parashara descriptions here. This is very beautiful and dense. So verses 17 through 18 and a half. Sagittarius described. The sign Sagittarius rises. So these last four would be considered the third cycle of the four elements. Many modern astrologers call this, or I've heard this described as the Sattvic cycle of the elements of these four Rashis. So, and in fact, Sagittarius is Sattvic, so it starts off that way. I'm curious now, but then again we had, I was going to go back and see if Leo, but yeah, we already covered that Leo was Sattvic. I'll just go through all the gunas real quick, because that's a very interesting characteristic that gives a lot of depth here. We had Aries and Taurus as both Rajoguni. We had Gemini being left blank. There's no description, which seems like it might go in different directions, perhaps, because it has two different perspectives of the male and female. Cancer is Sattvic. Leo is Sattvic. So we have two Sattvika gunas in a row with the luminary ruled Rashis, Cancer and Leo. Then in Virgo, we became Tamoguni. So it's like once you go up to the sun, coming back down to the realm of thought and problem solving, may be necessary in the realm of the earthly plane, but it's not the most elevated place to be focused on minutiae. Then Libra was Rajoguni, and Scorpio was that Sattva? I'm trying to see. Did it even say? The sign Scorpio? No, it doesn't even say. So it's funny how Parashara didn't give explicit, at least in this section, descriptions of the gunas of all of the Rashis. He left out Gemini guna in this section at least, and he left out Scorpios as well, it appears, unless there's something missing from this translation, which I would assume there isn't. So, yeah, so we have a Rajoguni in Libra. So Libra, it also said it's violence, and so, but violence with an attempted purpose, an ambition behind it, if it's Rajoguni. And the first two Rajoguni, that would be true for as well. Aries and Taurus, willing to fight to go forward, or Taurus to stay consistent in your path to really protect the village, perhaps, and there's an earth element, fire element there. Libra has the air element. So let's keep going. Although an earth element is what's listed here. Right. So, an air and earth together. Wow. I mean, the way the elements are listed by Parashara, I'm trying to connect it to my understanding of the elements, the Rashis, and the Grahas, but it's fascinating that, Libra, it's the cardinal air sign. You would expect it to say it rules air, but it doesn't. It only says that its lord is Venus, who rules water, as we know, and it wanders on earth. So in this sense, Libra and Scorpio both have an earth and water components, which is fascinating, because I think as we go to Capricorn, that does as well, but we'll see. All right. So Sagittarius, jumping ahead, because I could just ponder on this all day. Let's keep going. The sign Sagittarius rises with its back, and its lord is Jupiter. It is Satvika. Its hue is pale. It is strong in night. Okay, so we've returned to the night now after having some day. I think all of them were day from sun onwards. Is that correct? Virgo strong in the day. Yes, Libra strong in the day. Scorpio strong in the day. And Sagittarius is strong in the night. So we had essentially 4 Rashis in a row that would be traditionally thought of as the second cycle of the 4 elements. Rashis 5 through 8, Leo through Scorpio. All 5 of those were indeed day ruling in the day. And that's exactly what I predicted or assumed would line up with the first 4 being of the night. So now my prediction is of the last 4 that we would have half in the day, half the night. Although I would have guessed that it would have been the first 2 would be in the day still, and then the last 2 being a night, to keep that balance of planetary rulership of the Jupiter and Saturn ruled Rashis, although it appears it may be flipped, or I could be incorrect about that equal division. We'll find out. However, what we know is Sagittarius is strong in night, its hue and pale, its element is fire, as we know. It is considered the dual fire sign, or in Western astrology terms, is it changeable, mutable fire sign, is the modality, or triplicity, and its Varna race is Kshatriya. Okay, so by race they mean, what do you call it, unless I'm getting something wrong here. Does that mean race, or does that mean caste? I believe that's a caste, right? So the Varna is Kshatriya, royal or martial, which is interesting because you would think of Mars as being that, not Jupiter, but this is where the distinctions get a little bit more complex. With the relationship between the Rashis and the Grahas that rule it. So actually Sagittarius is a protector. There's a royalty or military element to it, much like the sun, which makes sense if you compare it to Leo and the sun. Leo is also Kshatriya, martial by race, ruling its kingdom. And we haven't been looking at the caste so much, but Aries, also royal caste. What was Scorpio? Scorpio was Brahmin. Yeah, so that's fascinating. That's totally flipped from the planetary aspect of Scorpio and Sag, where it's exactly flipped because Mars, which rules Scorpio, would be Kshatriya. It would be of this martial chief of the military position, I believe. I think that would make it fall into the Kshatriya category, if I remember correctly. And then the Brahmin caste would relate to Jupiter, because that's wisdom, that's guru. But however, here it's flipped, where the Scorpio, which is Mars ruled, is Brahmin, because it's going into the depth of the waters, bringing it up to land, and it doesn't go out looking for trouble, but it has the sharp sting to protect itself. It has this advanced ability to protect, given by Mars, but its focus is actually on something more ethereal, perhaps, because of the water element, as well as, everything else I said, but yeah. The water and earth combination with fire, I would say, gives it this mystical element. And then Sagittarius is Kshatriya, royal or martial. It is biped, so it's a human sign, perhaps. It is biped to 15 degrees and afterwards quadruped. Oh, wow. That's fascinating that that Parashara wrote that he said half of it, the first half of Sagittarius is biped, the second half is quadruped. I never heard that before. So, I mean, of course, we have the imagery of the archer on the horse, so that part makes sense, but it shows that the archer comes first. The archer comes in the Mula Trikona of Jupiter, and then the quadruped, which is more the work to follow suit, a lot like the Aries going into Taurus, where Aries starts something and then Taurus continues it. There's a similar kind of dynamic here within the first and second half of Sagittarius, I'd say. And it has even body and bears a bow and arrow. It resides in the east and wanders on the earth. Resides in the east, so this is again returning back to the east, like Aries, where the sun rises. So there's some connection here with in terms of Aries and Sag both being rising in the east and having Kshatriya, martial or royal cast. And if we look at Leo, that's also Kshatriya. Does that rise in the east? It does. So yeah, it makes sense because Aries, Mars, Leo, Sag are all friends. These are all the three fire signs that we're looking at. So all three of them are related to the sun rising. All three of them are related to this aspect of reality. It has even body and bears a bow and arrow. It resides in the east and wanders on the earth. Okay, it's not the first earth wandering sign either. Libra also wanders on the earth, but it's in the west. So that's an interesting connection there between Sag and Libra, which have compatible elements, you could say, of fire and air that go together. Okay, so it resides in, I already said that twice. Brahma, the creator god, has made it splendorous. So there's this extra little, beauty added into this that we haven't seen yet, where it's not even mentioning, it mentions Jupiter at the beginning of the shloka instead of the end here. And then at the end of the shloka, it says, Brahma, the creator god, has made it splendorous. We have not heard, in fact, I just want to double check. It seems like most of the other, not all of them, but most of the other descriptions have the planetary lord listed at the end. Well, actually, that's not true. They're all kind of different. But so that's an interesting thing to look at in itself. There's so many layers to this chapter. I mean, this is something that could really, I'm really just kind of taken aback by the poetry and the formatting of it all. So we have, just briefly, I just want to notice this, because I've never heard anyone mention this aspect before, assuming the translation is being true to the way the shlokas were written, which I'm sure it is. So we have Lord Mars written at the end of the Aries shloka. We have Venus at the beginning. So right there we have this, potentially yin-yang, masculine, feminine energy description where the masculine energy sign Aries has its planet listed at the end. Taurus has it listed at the beginning. Venus is in the first part of the shloka. Then Gemini, where's Mercury written? At the end, which would make it more masculine because it's also an odd Rashi, which would make it masculine, and its air element, which is more masculine. Cancer, by this logic, with the moon, would be listed at the beginning, and is it? No, it's listed at the end. So that destroys my whole theory of why this would be. So could be arbitrary in the translation, or it could not be. I don't know, but why would moon be listed at the end and then sun at the beginning? So that's flipped it. So I could speculate maybe moon and sun are an exception to this rule if this rule continues. We'll see in a second, because moon and sun are the primary luminaries. So perhaps everything else is an inversion of them, because you could say sun is the primary fire sign, Mars secondary fire, and then moon the primary water sign as the luminary with water elements and feminine energy, and then Venus as the secondary. So let's see what Virgo does by this logic. I think since it's an even sign, we would think, the first Mercury sign was listed Mercury at the end of the shloka, so I would guess this would be at the beginning like Taurus, but let's see. No, it's not. It's at the end. So there's something else going on here with why they're listed at the beginning or end. So Mercury is listed at the end twice. Let's see if the rulers are consistent. Is Mars listed at the end of Scorpio or not? It is. Is Venus listed at the beginning of the shloka on Libra or not, like Taurus is? It's not. So that's disappointing. That sort of gives this a lot of inconsistency with why would Parasara or the translation or whatever this is coming from, why would it be inconsistent with that? So this would require deeper consideration, or maybe this isn't even worth looking into, because I was really enjoying noticing that pattern, especially with regard to this Sagittarius description where Jupiter is listed at the beginning like Venus. So that could be something for the benefics, except that it didn't stay consistent for Libra. Although Libra and Taurus are both Rajoguni. Yeah, I don't know. Well, what's unique about Sagittarius is that it has Jupiter listed at the beginning, it's Sattvika, and then at the end it says Brahma has made it splendorous. And if we think about the nakshatras associated with Sagittarius, is there a Brahma connection? Brahma really appears mostly in Capricorn, actually. Although it does, the first pada of Uttara Ashada, if we start the nakshatras at, what would it be? If we start the nakshatras with Ashwini, then, the Brahma is not related actually to Uttarashada. It's only related to the last pada of Uttarashada, which is simultaneously the hidden 28th nakshatra of Abhijit, which also covers the first 15th, I believe, of Shravana. So I'm just thinking out loud if there's any other way this would kind of add up. There is actually. If you go back to the ancient Vedas, this might be a stretch, but the original ordering of the nakshatras was Kritika as the first one. And if you did it that way, then that would actually put the sign of Brahma, which rules over Abhijit, firmly into Sagittarius. So that's something to consider. It's not something Jyotishis commonly look at, the nakshatra wheel placing Kritika at the start of Aries and how that would, be viewed, how things would line up like that. But that actually would put Brahma in charge of Sagittarius. You could say 4,000 years ago, when the Vedas put Kritika as the first of the nakshatras, which has a beautiful symmetry to it. Although I also like the Ashwini way of starting the nakshatras. But in any case, so that's a lot of thought on Sagittarius and observations, because there's so much depth in these little shlokas. I mean, I wasn't expecting to go this gradually through them. But let's do one more at least. Let's see how many more pages we have in this chapter. I may do a second recording to finish this chapter. I'm surprised. But 19 through 20, Capricorn described, this sign is lorded by Saturn. So we have the planet at the beginning, just like Jupiter, just like, most of them actually. This sign is lorded by Saturn, is Tamoguni, and its element is Earth. So that's standard, Earth. Tamasic. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because it reminds me of the relationship, again, between Leo and Virgo, between Sag and Capricorn. We have this fire-earth dynamic with both of these pairs of four signs that starts Sattvic, and then when it goes to the earth element, it becomes Tamasic. So that's interesting. It's almost like once you capture this fire of Agni, of, truth, of wisdom, of Brahma, then you come down. It's like if you think you have to climb a mountain, if you think you have to figure out a bunch of problems and marry the perfect husband or wife as the virgin or whatever, like, these are like more tamasic ideas that I have to have something that is really just the real truth of Leo and Sagittarius is to just let things unfold. Whereas this earth element is a lot more nitpicky and trying to, figure things out and climb the mountain and be meticulous with Virgo. Interestingly, Taurus is Rajoguni, the same as Aries. So that's the exception to the three earth element signs. And so that shows Taurus is more like relaxed and just letting things unfold, whereas it's kind of already just continuing whatever Aries started. Also, Aries isn't Sattvic, so it didn't get to the bottom of everything, you could say. It just kind of gets things started. Taurus continues it. Gemini takes it to kind of a fun place that doesn't seem to have any guna associated with it, interestingly. So it could go either way. This male and female couple, it's like you could have a range of what can be created with a family, with, a male and female combination. You could have a relationship, you could have a friendship, you could have marriage, you could have divorce, you could have something very holy, you could have something very unholy, and anger and violence. You could have every combination. So Gemini has this element, and sidereally, you would usually see Ardra at the center of Gemini, and I did a whole video on that about how Gemini has this element of the storm, but there's also the silence and the calm of the storm. There's also the rainbow that comes at the end of the storm. So the beauty of Gemini is just and the different elements of it are multifaceted, basically. And then Cancer and Leo both Sattvic, and that's just because they're the luminaries. So they're giving the archetypal energies of fire and water, yin and yang energy in their own ways. And then, let's see, then we went through Virgo, and then we got to, which we just covered, is Tamasic. Libra was Rajasic. So that air element is explicitly Rajasic, which is interesting. We didn't get that for Gemini. So, but at this point, the Rajasic energy of Libra is coming out of the Tamasic of Virgo, where Virgo kind of got maybe a little obsessive about attention to detail, and some problems were created, even though by trying to solve problems, because even every time you try to solve a problem, you're actually creating new problems. It's just one of the laws of problem solving. It doesn't mean you shouldn't solve problems. It's just, part of how it works. Whereas Libra is going to get a wider perspective. It wanders on Earth, and it's, ruled by Venus, which rules water. It's the cardinal air sign. So again, this water, air, earth connection, this 3-element connection with Libra. Also the fact that it's a changeable sign, or in Western astrology, it'd be called a cardinal sign. This indicates that it's, that's the fiery yang energy modality. So Libra actually has this balance of everything, which makes sense because it's about balance. So it has a bit of all 4 elements in it. And the Rajoguni nature is it's trying to do something, combine things. It's even violent, it says. And Shudra, I believe, is that's the caste that's related to being doing physical labor, basically. So it's just doing the labor to get somewhere. And then Scorpio again. I just want to look at the guna, Sattvic. So now we're back to a very deep mystical perspective, and we have 2 water signs that are both Sattvic. Then Sagittarius, also Sattvic, and so we have 2 fire signs in a row that are both Sattvic. And then Capricorn, we're back to Tamasic, as we said. It resides in the south and is strong in night. So we have our second Rashi in a row that's strong in night, starting with Sag and Capricorn, which makes sense because they're, well, actually, I'm not sure. I want to jump ahead and just see Aquarius and Pisces. Are they, yeah, just like I hypothesized, they're both strong in the day. So we get this cycle that's really interesting of Aries through Cancer are strong in the night, then Sun through Scorpio, which are matching symmetrical Rashis in a sense, are strong in the day. And then we get an inversion when we get to the side, what would that side be? The south? And so when we get to the south side of signs 9 through 12, Rashi's Sag through Pisces, now we get it flipped, where suddenly it goes from day into night, from Scorpio in day to Sag and Capricorn in night, and then you go back to the daytime for 2 Rashis. So it doesn't really match what an actual day would look like, to have this weird, how do you even call that, just inversion of day and night for 2 signs. It doesn't really make a lot of sense literally. So that's something to ponder. Why would that be? And I'm sure that's been written about and speculated on. But that's something worth pondering in and of itself. And I've seen visuals of that with the South Indian chart before, and always wondered, why is that? And so that's something to really ponder and come to your own conclusion on, perhaps. So Capricorn rises with its back, has an unwieldy or huge body, so unwieldily huge, as opposed to Aries, which had a huge bulky body that it was in control of. Capricorn, there's almost this element where the body is so big it becomes unwieldy, perhaps, and is variegated, so it's not consistent in its structure. It wanders on land and in forests. It is quadruped in its first half and footless in the second half and glides in water. That's a lot of distinction. So it goes from being, and elsewhere it's been described or translated literally, Capricorn, as like a crocodile, I believe. In Jaimini's writings on the Rashis, I believe it's called a crocodile. But so it has the first half of it, the first 15 degrees has is a quadruped. So which could be any quadruped. It could be a lion or tiger or bear or dog. In the second, but maybe it does mean crocodile or something like that, because in the second half it becomes footless. And what is footless? A snake is footless. There's really not too much else I can think of. So a snake has no feet. So it's almost like this reptile reverse evolution as it goes on, and it's going back into the waters that everything evolved out of, which is more of an internalized idea of liberation as well, where we're going back into the water from the land. This is reversing the cycle of creation and evolution into the material world and going back towards liberation and understanding of divine consciousness. This sign is lorded by Saturn, is Tamoguni, and its earth element, and is earth. Yeah, so it can go between land and water. That was also true for Scorpio, because it's saying Capricorn can glide in water, although it says that in the second half it glides in water. In the first half, it's a quadruped that wanders. In general, it just says it wanders on land and in forests. So just easy to navigate land and more difficult to navigate land, I suppose. I don't know if that's the best way to put that, but land and in forests is an interesting combination that seem kind of similar. But yeah, so Capricorn is very versatile, and it's because it's ruled by Earth, it's more grounded, whereas Scorpio is versatile, it's more aimed at liberation. Capricorn is also aimed at liberation and figuring things out, problem solving in its own way. And this, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So Shloka 21 through 21 and a half, Aquarius described. The sign Aquarius is represented by a male holding a pot. It has brown complexion and medium-sized body and is biped. It is strong in day, resides in deep water, and its element is air. It rises with its head and is Tamoguni. Its Varna, caste, is Shudra, lowborn. It is the lord of the western direction. It is lorded or ruled by Saturn. So Aquarius related to Saturn makes sense because we're getting close to the end here of the Rashis, and it's the second ruled Saturn sign. It's actually Saturn's Mula Trikona. It's its preferred sign where it becomes recharged. So I've heard Ernst Wilhelm describe his analysis of this male holding a pot, simultaneously while it resides in deep water, that this being kind of about the mental affliction of Aquarius that's kind of looking for something else when it's surrounded by just everything it needs, and that this is a deep part of it. This would also relate to the Tamoguni, the delusion part of Aquarius, that it's some male person who's a biped, medium-sized, kind of average person. It says brown complexion. We haven't been talking about complexions too much, but some are pale or whatever, and some are dark, blood red, or was one of them black? Yeah, Libra was black complexion. And so, brown complexion would be halfway between. So there's something about Aquarius that's in between things in terms of it's ruled by the air element, but it's deep in water. So the air element residing in deep water is a very interesting combination in itself. It makes me think of like a hurricane potential or something, or deep underwater there's just tides, or I don't know the right term for this, but there's just currents of water that are going tumultuously around. Like it's not a peaceful, still water. Like maybe Scorpio might be more related to. Was Cancer related to water? No, Cancer, funny enough, resides in forests, although its element is water. So there's an earth and water element. Cancer is kind of this earthy water element. Here in Aquarius, we have an air element that's in water. So it's kind of like this whole other combination. And it's about hard work because of the cast, it's about consistent service because it's in Shudra class. It is the Lord of the Western direction, so it's where the sun sets, and Saturn in directional strength rules the West, so it makes a lot of sense. What do we have for Capricorn in terms of that? Capricorn was in the South, which is interesting. So, because that would be Saturn in the South. But, yeah, I don't have more to say about Aquarius. It is a very idiosyncratic, seemingly paradoxical sign just on the face of it, with somebody holding a pot that is residing in deep water and their element is air. I mean, again, we have this earth, water, air combination with this Rashi because a pot is actually a piece of earth that has been shaped to hold water. But holding a pot underwater, it's like, I mean, that it reminds me of like this phrase someone said to me once about some spiritual book where like every sentence by, Ramana Maharshi or whatever is like a pearl. And if you just read all these things that Ramana Maharshi said, it's like you're just walking over pearl after pearl to get to more pearls. This is kind of the energy of Aquarius. It's something that's just tamasic, so it's not noticing what's right in front of it. Capricorn and Aquarius are both tamasic. It's like the part of the journey of the Rashis that is almost superfluous in a way. It's more. It's going to wind up being more worldly. It's going to wind up, unfolding the lotus flower of the apparent illusory Maya in a beautiful way. I mean, Capricorn creates beautiful things. Aquarius just continues the work towards beautiful things. I mean, in this sense, there's an Aries-Taurus relationship to Capricorn Aquarius because they have the same two modalities of changeable going into fixed modalities. I guess the other one of those or two of those would be, just for comparison, is Cancer Leo, which is the more regal, royal aspect of that, and then Libra Scorpio, which is more of a mixed. But the thing is, you get to Scorpio, which is Sattvic. So you get to something Sattvic with Scorpio. With Capricorn and Aquarius, you start off in a tamasic place, and then you continue in a tamasic place. And that's because Saturn is tamasic, and it's ruling these two Rashis, and it's just sort of putting people on like this kind of final journey. It reminds me of the movie The Last Temptation of Christ and Martin Scorsese's depiction of Jesus on the cross having this tamasic vision, basically, of, what if he didn't die for God or whatever he was there to do dharmically, as the story metaphorically or literally, however you want to interpret that, is expressing. And so, or die for man, I mean, but really because God, he's heard from God that that's what he's supposed to do, or that's his dharma or whatever. That's like I said in another video, how Mars has this element of martyrdom. So there's that martyrdom element of the sacred masculine willing to die for a cause beyond itself. If the logic there is true, it feels congruent, or the faith is deeply felt, as perhaps is the case with Jesus in that story. So all of that, but he had these illusions when he was on the cross that kind of messed with him. And so Capricorn and Aquarius having this illusory element of hard work towards something that might ultimately not really be necessary because you're already surrounded by water. It's an interesting thing to notice. And then finally we have 3 shlokas for Pisces. This is the only, all the other shlokas are either 1 or 1.5 shlokas dedicated to each Rashi. So we have a sense of the importance you could say, of this shloka. Oh, and by the way, it's just occurring to me now, when I was asking about if there's something about this 1.5 shlokas, maybe 1.5 is 3 lines of Sanskrit, and um, hmm, actually, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it appears that one shloka in translated to English comprises 2 lines of Sanskrit, and 1.5 comprises 3. However, 2 shlokas of Sanskrit also comprises 3. Yeah, so that's a little confusing. Also, I have an example here of 2 comprising 4. So, yeah, I mean, this 1.5, again, if anyone wants to leave in the comment how Sanskrit works in terms of how you would count a half shloka, because by line, it's not really clear in these Sanskrit lines, because it appears like something that would be 5 shlokas or 4. Actually, yeah, I'm going on a tangent here, I know, but I don't know, it just occurred to me because I was looking at this. This has 5 lines of Sanskrit for these 2. It's actually 3 shlokas, 22 through 24. So let's just read it. The 3 shlokas on Pisces described. The sign Pisces has the appearance of a pair of fish, one tailed with the head of the other, and is strong in the day. Okay, so a pair of fish, one tailed with the head of the other. That's a little confusing how that's phrased. It makes it sound like you're just getting a head and a tail. You're not getting... I mean, traditionally this would be symbolically shown with the tails in a kind of opposite inverted positioning. But what it says here is one tailed, as in having a tail, with the head of the other. So I'm not sure how to interpret that exactly. And is strong in day. Its element is water, and it is sattva guna. So we're back to sattva now. And healthy. It glides in water, and Capricorn also glided in water, but perhaps the way a snake would. This glides as a fish would, but they can both move quickly in water, which is interesting. Whereas Scorpio would go into water, but it didn't say anything about gliding through it. So it might be a different kind of movement. And its Varna is Brahmin, which makes sense. It is footless, has medium-sized body, resides in the northern direction, and rises with both head and back. So that's a first. We haven't had anything up until now that rises with head and back. Its lord is Brahaspati, or Jupiter. So this is wisdom. This is the teacher of gods, right? So this is wisdom. And that's interesting. It says the Lord as the deity prior to Jupiter. So it's one of the only 2 signs, along with Sagittarius. The 2 Jupiter signs, in fact, are the only 2 that mention a deity involved, other than the Graha itself, where Sagittarius mentioned Brahma, and now Pisces is mentioning Brahaspati, the teacher of gods. Or it says the Lord is Brahaspati or Jupiter, which is interesting. Yeah, whereas Sagittarius said Lord is Jupiter, but Brahma has made it splendorous. The creator has made it splendorous. So that's a little slightly different, but also similar in that way. It is in this way that the 12 signs, each having 30 degrees, have been described to assess gross and specific effects. Okay, so this final shloka, it sounds like it's just a general thing. It's not about Pisces. It's just saying that the 12 signs having 30 degrees have been described to assess gross and specific effects. So, yeah, there's not much more to say about Pisces. That was pretty clear. I mean, we have a Sattvic Brahmin, the only Sattvic Brahmin sign, I believe. I mean, was Leo or Cancer Brahmin? No. Actually, Cancer was. Okay. So Cancer and Pisces are the 2 Sattvic Brahmin Rashis. So there's a connection there. And then Scorpio was Sattvic and Brahmin as well. Oh, wow. Okay, so those 3 are all Sattvic Brahmin. I believe everything else, all the other 3 elements didn't have that kind of consistency where, I mean, they didn't. Yeah, at all, I can see. So that's an interesting distinction, that the 3 water-ruled Rashis Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces are all Sattvic and all Brahmin. So that's very important to keep in mind. So now we have the author's note, but I think I'm gonna, do I read it? Because this is the longest recording I've done so far. Let's see, but I may break it up into two pieces. So let's see, notes. The description of the nature, appearance, etc. of the signs has given us a number of new things. Thus, it has been said that the signs Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Sagittarius, Capricorn are specifically strong in the nighttime, and the remaining signs gain specific strength in the daytime. This quality is to be considered, and so that's half in day, half in night still. This quality is to be considered specially in connection with making journeys. If the journey is to be made during nighttime, it will be more useful and successful if it is made when there is the rise of a sign that gains special strength during night. There is also the concept that the signs that gain specific strength during daytime influence the native's vigor, courage, and splendor, while those that are strong during night give him gracefulness and softness. Okay. Signs that gain strength during the day influence vigor, courage, and splendor, while those during night give gracefulness and softness. So the masculine, feminine sort of archetype descriptions there, based on day and night, sun and moon, makes sense. When the signs that are strong in night rise in the ascendant, and the Lord of the Ascendant is also strong in the nighttime, the native attaches great importance to secrecy. Yeah, so night would involve secrets. So this is all the author's own notes that really have nothing to do with what Parashara said, literally. So I'm just going to keep reading it, but it's like reading two different books, you know? And Brihat Parasara Hora Sastra is already a compiled collection of many different tellings of this book, or versions, I believe, that somebody put together 200 or 300 years ago. And so Girish Chand Sharma sort of added to this melting pot by consulting, as he said, with 6 or 7 other astrologers, and then adding that to the way it's translated as well as the notes. So reading one version of Brihat Parasara as opposed to another will give you a very different experience, especially with regard to these notes, which are not directly extrapolated at all from what we just read. Because, he's describing specific techniques and ways to apply what Parashara said that he has been taught, or other astrologers he consulted has said, which are totally valid things to consider and techniques to try out. So I'll continue with the notes of the commentator. Again, the signs have been classified as rising with back, with head, and with both back and head. Also, I should note, he's not giving any reference to other books here, but it's also possible that he is referencing other ancient texts and not just people he asked, or his own personal guru's take on it, or his own personal take on it. Also, it's worth note that whether it's, he's extrapolating from things written in other ancient texts, or it's also possible this is a oral tradition, lineage description of things that he has received, or one of the people he consulted with has received, that he's forwarding. So I don't want to sort of give the impression that it's better for it to come from his analysis to come from one place or another. Ultimately, these are things to sort of feel into, try out for yourself, and then just see what is right, what makes sense to you, and what works and what doesn't. But starting with Parashara is the key, and then recognizing the distinction between Parashara and what the commentator is saying is very important, and what I'm saying, which I hope is clear when I'm just doing my own commentary here and processing of this. So that's very important to make those distinctions. Okay, so again, the signs have been classified as rising with back, with head, and with both back and head. Krishna Yam says in this connection, if a horoscope... Okay, so here's a quote from Krishna Yam. I'm not sure if that's a book or a person, but here's the quote. If in a horoscope, a house or sign is without any planet in it, then the sign which rises with its head is to be regarded as beneficial. Okay, if the horoscope, okay, if in a horoscope a house or sign is without a planet in it, then the sign which rises with its head is regarded as beneficial. So if it has a head and no planet in it, it's beneficial. That which rises with its back is malicious or cruel, and that which rises with both back and head as giving both auspicious and inauspicious effects, if there's no planet in it. Okay. Okay, so now we have an idea of one interpretation of how to start analyzing that rising with the head, back, or both thing. If there's no planet in it, then rising with the head is good, rising with the back is bad, and mixed will give mixed results. Malefics in a sign which rises with its back grow more. Malefics in a sign which rises with its back grow more inauspicious effects giving, while its malicious effect will be somewhat diminished in a sign which rises with its head. Okay, so malefic planets that rise with in a sign with its back will be more inauspicious because the rising with the back is inauspicious. Interesting that Aries and Taurus began that way, and they both have, and they're both Tamaguna. No, they were both Rajaguna. So Rajaguna, which I mean is attributed to Mars and Sun, I believe, which are both malefics. Sun is a mild malefic. Mars is one of the two main malefics along with Saturn. So that's worth sort of considering. Malefics in a sign which rises with its back grow more inauspicious, effects giving, while its malicious effect will be somewhat diminished in a sign which rises with its head, although he will remain inauspicious, effects given even then. Right. Okay. So the malefic is going to be less auspicious in a sign with the head rising, and let's just see which ones those were again for reference. That would be Gemini. So Mars or Saturn or Rahu in Gemini wouldn't be quite so bad. And what else rises with the head? I mean, they're not even all listed. It doesn't say, Cancer doesn't say what it, oh no, Cancer does rise with the back. I'm sorry. Okay, so Gemini and Leo rise with their head. So these are good places for malefics to not be as bad in Gemini and Leo. And of course we know Pisces had both. Let's see what else, because this is something I didn't memorize yet. Virgo. Wow, does it not say on Virgo? No, it rises with its head. So Gemini and Virgo both rise with their head. I remember that now. Libra rises with its head. So even though Virgo's a Tamasic sign, it rises with its head. So malefics are going to not be as bad there. Libra rises with its head. Yeah, so does Scorpio say? I mean, they all seem to be saying it. It's just listed in different spots. Actually, I don't think Scorpio does say if it rises with its head or back. So it may be both, or it may be unknown, because I don't see it listed for Scorpio, actually. Then Sagittarius rises with its back. So that would be worse for malefics or with no graha in it. Capricorn rises with its back. Aquarius rises with its head. Okay, so it's sort of just scattered around here, which is which. I don't know how that's determined. I mean, there's an element that sounds more positive to rising with your head as opposed to back. Aquarius is the Mula Trikona of Saturn, so there's a more positive element there in that case. Sagittarius, was that one with the back? We just said it. I just said it, but yeah, I remember it was. So yeah, so that's compared to Pisces. Sagittarius is less auspicious for malefics to be not so bad, but Sagittarius is the Mula Trikona. So we can't do this based on Mula Trikona. We can't do this based on Guna. So this is its own distinct qualifier, it appears. Oh, I could think of one more way you could look at it. It's the masculine sign. So Aquarius and Sagittarius are both the masculine signs. Oh, yeah, but again, that's how Mula Trikona tends to work. But Sagittarius is less auspicious for a malefic to be in because it rises with its back. So this is just another factor to consider with Rashis that I've never considered or known about, really, is rising with the back or head or both. So it's just another thing to consider here. I don't see how it correlates to any of the other characteristics of the Rashis. So let's just continue. Although maybe it does in some way that I just can't see quickly and easily right now. Although I'm sure it does have its own deep significance to ponder into. Malefics in a sign, I just covered this. On the contrary, if the natural benefics are present in a sign which rises with its head, their auspiciousness will be augmented, and if they are in a sign which rises with its back, their auspiciousness will suffer diminution. Also, this is all from Krishnayam. So is he just saying Krishna said this, or is this from a book called Krishna, or a book where Krishna said this? I'm not sure. If there's a book called Krishnayam, he just says Krishnayam says that thing about the signs and the whether they rise with their head or back. These signs have relation with time of fruition also. Thus, planets in a sign which rises with its head give their effects earlier. On the other hand, planets in a sign which rises with its back give their effects in a longer duration of time, and those in a sign which rises with both its head and back become effectual neither very soon nor very late. They give their effects in mid-duration. So when he says this in the plural, that signs, those in he says those in a sign which rise with both head and back, I mean, he might as well just say Pisces, right? That's the only one that was true for. Although there might have been one that wasn't explicitly said, which I believe Cancer was the only one where it didn't say. So Cancer potentially could be rising with back and head, potentially, since it doesn't say in this translation. Okay, so as far as the fruition of how fast the effects are given, so rising with the head happens sooner, back happens later, mixture happens in between. The elements of these signs have also been determined. Elements are five: water, fire, earth, air, and sky. That ordering that he chose here, I'm not sure of. I suppose it does correlate to the zodiac in some sense. We're starting from Cancer, going into Leo, going into Virgo, going into Libra, and then sky. That there's no traditional element related to sky in the Rashis, I don't think. Or maybe there is. Maybe I missed something about a distinction in the word air and windy. Maybe windy was referring to sky, which would be the ether element. I'm not sure. Let's see what else he says here, the commentator. These have been spoken of as Mahabhutas also. Rudra Bhatta says, that is, the limb which has the combination of opposite bhutas, elements, will be subject to the growth of various diseases. Huh. Well, that's okay. I suppose that's talking about planetary placements, not the Rashi itself. I don't know. Thus, if there is a mixture of the elements of earth and water, these elements are not opposite to each other, but fire and water are elements that are mutually opposite. In a horoscope, if a planet is situated in a sign whose element is opposed to the element of the planet, then in the limb represented by a house and a sign will get disease. And if the planet is situated in a sign whose element is the same as that of the planet, then the limb represented by a house and a sign will be strengthened. So this is according to Rudra Bhatta, another source that I'm not familiar with. So yeah, but this also doesn't really get to, each Rashi was given an element, but they were also given, some of them were given multiple elements, I feel like. If I go back to Scorpio, it resides in water and land, and other than that, it doesn't say it's a water element, it just says it resides in water and land. And we had similar things with a couple other signs. So yeah, I think that makes it a little bit more complicated, but just again, something you could test out for yourself, which way to look at these things. The Varnas, castes, or race, because of course this is one commentator giving referencing another book, and which may have been, recommended to him to recommend by one of the other 6 astrologers consulted for this translation. So, there's just a lot of extra commentary layers of it here, and then you're hearing it through my, analysis. So, yeah, this is really, this is a great way to read this. That's interesting to read it with the commentary, but I could see just reading Parashara's words by itself and then doing your own personal research if something isn't clear, not necessarily what one particular author, like this one, has put in the notes, might be an even better way to study this kind of text. But this is interesting because it feels like I'm studying, just a specific version of a book with a specific commentator and translator. So there's something enjoyable about that as well. So I'll just continue doing that for now. So the varnas, castes, or races of the planets are made use of at the time of comparing the horoscopes of the bridegroom and the bride. The tradition is that the bridegroom should be a person belonging to higher varna in comparison to the varna of the bride, or both should be of the same varna. Okay, so that would be the planets that are made use of at the time. Yeah, so comparing the moon of the potential husband and wife to each other, and sun and Mercury, etc., and seeing what caste the rashis are in, as well as the grahas, I would assume. The sign or planet falling in the house of enemy, the 6th house, begets enmity with the person having that sign or planet in his ascendant. Besides this, so that's a specific technique that's not really related to this chapter at all, because that's more of a house technique that except it is related to a sign or planet. So the sign or planet related to your 6th house, if you meet someone with that ascendant, that's going to, that planet in their ascendant, or the lord of that ascendant, or that rashi in their ascendant, then this is saying you'll have enmity. You won't get along with that person necessarily. Besides this, the sign or planet which indicates profit or loss, the native will be benefited or harmed by the person of that race. Okay, profit or loss would be the 11th or the 10th house. The sign or planet that are associated with the 11th or 12th house then. So that will, if somebody has that in their ascendant, it could affect you positively or negatively in that sense, is what he's saying. Again, not really related to the rashis at all, other than it's a technically rashi technique, but it's not related to the zodiacal signs described by Parashara in any way, specifically. But the author chose to put it in here, or the commentator chose to put it in here, just because that's a good technique to try out, for sure. And you may find it very effective. So finally, we have 5 more shlokas to finish this chapter. That seem to go in a very different direction, a lot like how the last chapter on grahas ended with the upagrahas calculations. So this is giving us an alternative lagna calculation, I believe, called the Nisheka lagna. So here's the 6 shlokas on it. Parashara says to Maitreya, "O excellent of all the sages, listen to me. I tell you that having known the natal ascendant, the astrologer should determine the Nisheka lagna, the lagna at the time of Garbhadan, or conception. O Maitreya, consider it. Now is explained to you as to how to arrive at the Nisheka lagna when the natal ascendant has been ascertained or known. The difference between the house occupied by Saturn and that occupied by Mandi Gulika is first known." Okay. Wait, what? The difference between the house occupied by Saturn and that occupied by Mandi Gulika is first known. Okay, that's a little confusing. I thought Gulika was related to the portion. Oh, okay, yeah, because it's not related to Saturn exactly. It's related to the Varnesha, which we covered in the last sign. But the Varnesha, it all has to do with Saturn in a conceptual way, but it's not related directly to the house of Saturn. It's related to a different calculation involving Saturn and the days of the week and the way that divides into the half of the day that's night or day, depending if it's a day chart or night chart, I believe. So anyway, okay, so I'll read that one more time. So these are two separate things he's referring to, of course. Otherwise, he wouldn't say that. Parashara says, the difference between the house occupied by Saturn and that occupied by Mandi, Gulika, is first known. Also, there's this debate about whether Gulika and Mandi are the same upagraha or not. And here, I guess, Parashara is saying Mandi, where in the last chapter he said Gulika. Here, the commentator, translator, put Gulika in parentheses because they are of the mind that they're the same thing. Okay. To the resultant is added the difference between the ascendant and the house of destiny, the ninth house. The product in Rasis, signs, and degrees, etc., which results will represent the months, days, etc., that elapsed between Naisheka, conception, and birth. Okay, so this is between conception and birth. Interesting. Which would be about 9 months, ninth house relationship here too. Interesting. If the ascendant lord, because nine house for from conception to birth for a human. If the ascendant lord is in the invisible half, 6 houses from the ascendant house anti-clockwise. 6 houses from, okay, anti-clockwise means the first through 6 houses. Right, this is the invisible half. This is before the sun rises, basically. Houses 1 through 6. The internal houses, whereas 7 through 12 are the external day houses, or visible half. Right. The degrees, etc. The moon moved in the particular Rashi sign occupied by her. The moon moved in the particular Rashi sign occupied by her are to be added to the above-mentioned product. Having calculated the Naisheka Lagna in the above manner, or taking that resultant to be the Naisheka Lagna of the native, the good and bad effects experienced by him in the womb can be speculated and told. Also, with the help of the Naisheka Lagna, one can know well with one's imagination the effects like the longevity, death, etc. of the native's parents. Wow, okay. Okay, I'm not sure if I understand. I'm getting a little tired, so I missed some of that. Let me just see. As I was reading it, having calculated the Naisheka in the above matter, or taking the result to be the Naisheka Lagna of the native, the good or bad effects experienced by him in the womb can be speculated and told. Okay, so this is all about what was experienced while in the womb based on where this secondary Lagna is placed. And it will also show you, with one's imagination, the effects like longevity, death of the parents. Wow, well that was a long 6 shlokas, I must say, and there's no notes from the author on it, or from the commentator on it, only an example that shows you the degrees, which will maybe help clarify this before we end this chapter in recording. Suppose the spasta of the house in which Saturn is situated in is at 7 degrees and 29, or what does that say? No, 7th sign, Libra, 29 degrees, 15 minutes, 40 seconds, in which and then Mandi, Gulika is at 6, the 6th sign of Virgo, 24 degrees, 50 minutes, 20 seconds, so we've got a difference of roughly 1 sign and 5 degrees. The difference between the two is, in fact, 1 sign and 4 degrees and 25 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay, so that's the difference between Saturn, difference between where Saturn and Gulika. That's what it is. It says the house in which Saturn is situated and of Gulika, and yet he's getting these precise degrees. So, to me, that's an interpretation of Parashara that was not explicit, but it does seem, since he's calling it a Lagna, that you would need to know the degree, but maybe not. I don't know, because I'm not sure how he's calculating this in terms of the actual planetary position of Saturn, or the cusp or beginning of the house that Saturn is in. That's the question I would have. And then what house system you're going to use, basically, on top of that would be another question. The simplest way, it does seem like you would just go with the planet and the upagraha degree if you calculated that. The difference between these two is, as I said, 1 sign and 4 degrees. The spashta of the 9th house, which means I know we talked about the ninth house. The resultant is added to the difference between the ascendant and the house of the ninth. So Spashta just means the difference between the ascendant and the ninth house, apparently. And wait, was it Lord of the Ascendant? No, the difference between the ascendant and the house of the destiny. Huh. Well, that's going to be 9 signs, and here it has only 2 signs in 15 degrees. So I don't understand why that would be. Then you have the Lagna Spashta minus the Lagna Spashta. Yeah, so, and then you get a difference, and so this is a big math equation of subtraction and addition of all these things. I'm not able to follow it to understand it fully, but at least this gives you this idea that there's a special lagna known as the Nisheka lagna that can be calculated as long as you know Saturn's position and Gulaika or Mandi's position, and this will give you the Nisheka lagna that can be used with imagination to see the effects, the longevity of one's parents, and as well as what you experienced in the womb, good and bad effects. So, but what this final equation came out to, that this example gave, therefore the time of conception of the native is 9 months, 2 days ago was 55 gatis and 29 palas. So yeah, so I guess that's going to tell you where it shows up in the chart, because it's going to be 9 rashis, 2 degrees, 55 minutes, and 29 seconds in this example, different in this author or commentator's example. So yeah, that's something to look into more on your own, because, that was not a perfect, that was not a complete description of how to really find this Nasheka Lagna, but at least it gives you an idea of how it's done, and then you can Google to get, I'm sure there's really good descriptions that will explain that, and I don't remember seeing an NL, an Nisheka Lagna, in Kala software or Jagannath Hora, but if it's here included in the 4th chapter of Brihat Parasara Hora Sastra, I'm certain that it would be in there somewhere. So yeah, look into this for yourself. That's an interesting thing the chapter ends with, almost like an addendum. In fact, why was this at the end of the chapter on signs? It almost seems like it was tacked on. I mean, we're talking about an ascendant that involves Saturn and Gulaika, and there was really no mention of Gulaika elsewhere in this chapter, no real mention of ascendants, or when we were talking about the Rashis themselves. Although, yeah, ascendant is a way that you can get an idea of the way somebody will be, the Rashi and planets associated with their ascendant. It's like the first thing you would look at, really. So, yeah, that's the end of this chapter that wasn't even that long, but was very dense, by Parashara on the Rashis, which I really enjoyed going through, honestly. I'm going to go back and look at this again sometime, many times, I'm sure. And I recommend you look at it as well on your own. And if there's any other comments you'd like to leave to add to what I've said, please leave comments. And my contact information's in the description. And yeah, I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Peace.